Hey everyone, welcome to my channel. I'm Brittany and I take a look at the tools and systems marketed to photographers and creative small business owners. Sometimes I'm looking at different types of tech and sometimes I'm unpacking trends, changes, or just any curiosities about the industry. If that level of vague explanation sounds like it's your kind of thing, I hope you'll consider subscribing to my channel. I've been wondering lately about the pros and cons of using an all-in-one admin workflow as a photographer. There are loads of business platforms out there that boast an all-inclusive kind of vibe, where one subscription can handle client galleries, website creation, shop integrations, CRM tools, amongst other things that are tossed in to sweeten a particular system's deal. And honestly, that sounds kind of dreamy. Everything in one place makes things super easy. But the more I think about it, the more I wonder if it's too good to be true. Is putting your entire business admin in the hands of one tool smart or risky? That's what I want to talk through today. I'm not here to tell you what to do. If you are happy in an all-in-one setup, that is amazing. And if you prefer a mix and match system with your favorite tools, fantastic. More power to you. I just want to unpack the trade-offs, I guess, because even the most flawless setup comes with some pain points. So let's chat about having one system to rule our workflow and break it down a bit. There is a huge value in having a system that does it all. These platforms typically promote efficiency, practicality, and even a bit of stress relief. Everything being in one place, like our website, galleries, contracts, invoices, and booking tools, is incredible. It means we aren't app hopping, managing a bunch of different logins, or juggling a bunch of tabs. And as an expert in having too many tabs open, minimizing that is a massive win for a lot of people, since it reduces the kind of technology clutter that can and does wear people down. Of course, there are downsides. If something goes down in one of these all-in-one systems, everything goes down. A site outage or maintenance happening could bring a big chunk of our workflow to a halt, at least for a little while. There seems to be a pretty delicate balance between convenience and control. On one hand, there's a consistent interface. Once we learn how the system works, that knowledge carries over everywhere for the entirety of the application. Everything feels familiar and works together in harmony, which I really enjoy a lot. But that consistency can turn into a bit of confinement. If the system lags behind on updates, there's a feature that's missing, or it's not quite built the way we were hoping, we don't really get to swap it out with another tool as easily. We're kind of stuck with what we got. Now, when it comes to updates and support, all-in-one platforms really shine. There's only one changelog to keep up with and one support team to reach out to. It simplifies a lot of the back-end stress that can come from piecemealing separate tools together, especially the experience. That said, sometimes there can be an imbalance. Like if a company decides to pour all their energy into improving their booking system while pushing a clunky gallery uploader to the wayside. Or what if they invest in more AI features but drop the ball on their mobile experience? That's kind of the trade-off with ecosystems. They are super awesome until they aren't, and then it's up to us to decide if the not awesome things will result in us not renewing a subscription. And I totally agree that paying one company instead of 4 or 5 is very appealing. I think limiting the amount of subscriptions that are relied upon can not only be cost-effective, but also reduce the amount of mental bandwidth needed when managing everything. But if that pricing ever changes, or if the brand bundles new features into a higher pricing tier, we're either paying more, losing access, or needing to migrate to another system entirely. So yeah, these systems can be incredibly efficient, and for some photographers, that efficiency is exactly what they need. But there's also a kind of commitment here that goes beyond how much something costs. There's a good amount of trust that needs to be given to one system to grow with us, and hoping that the things we care about don't get left behind. But here's where it gets kind of interesting. These systems aren't trying to grow just by themselves. They're connecting, collaborating, and in some ways expanding their reach through the tools we're probably already using. Say hello to integrations, the little bridge builders that bring it a bit more together. These platforms might not do everything themselves, but they're schmoozing with other tools and brands that will allow them to feel like a full service setup. So just to give a little example of what I mean here, let's say I use an all-in-one business platform. We'll call it Protophoto. It's my client-facing hub for things like my website, booking, and gallery delivery. Now, let's imagine that Protophoto has an integration with my AI culling and editing application, SmartyShot. As soon as a client is booked in Protophoto, a matching folder is automatically created in SmartyShot. So even before I start shooting, my culling workspace is already prepped. After the shoot, I import the images into that SmartyShot folder for culling and editing, and once everything's checked over and approved, I can one-click export the images directly to my fine-tuning tool for edits, Light Adjust. Then, thanks to another integration, I can export my final images from Light Adjust straight back into Protophoto. From there, I send the gallery off to the client from the Protophoto gallery page. It's not just a smoother flow, it's a connected toolkit. Every step hands off to the next without losing momentum. These integrations don't have to be big, flashy features either. Sometimes it's just linking our calendar, syncing with Zoom, or using something like Zapier to automate repetitive steps. They help tools talk to each other so the work doesn't feel so scattered. But as helpful as they are, they're not always guaranteed. Some systems may not prioritize aging integrations, or platforms that used to work well together can end their partnerships, change direction, or limit access behind a higher tier plan. So while integrations can create a more seamless experience, they also require some research, trial and error, and a bit of keeping our eye on how things evolve. No one system is the same as the other, and the amount of integrations they all offer varies greatly between platforms as well. So it's definitely worth knowing how flexible or limited our options really are, especially if you're hoping to keep your workflow flowing smoothly. At this point, I think it's pretty clear that all-in-one doesn't mean replacing every single tool in our workflow, but what it does do really well is reduce the number of tools we need to rely on to feel like our business is under control. Most of these platforms consolidate a handful of different workflows, and that definitely isn't a small task. Those client-facing pieces are often the most stressful part of running a business, and having them under one login is a huge mental unload. I got this visual of a juggling octopus in my head while I was trying to make sense of what I mean, and apparently that's a pretty common image used to represent multitasking. Each part of a business is like a ball being juggled by an octopus. Every tentacle has its ball or task: marketing, culling, editing, storage, emailing, invoices, so on and so forth. And the more we add, the more likely it is that a tentacle is gonna get wrapped up with another and something is gonna get dropped. But if we take 3 or 4 of those balls, or tasks, and roll them into one, suddenly the octopus has some freed up tentacles to help bolster the others, which can start making it easier on the octopus to manage. That's how I'm seeing these all-in-one platforms. They're not attempting to do everything, they're just helping us juggle less. So when we circle back to the bigger question, is putting your business in the hands of one tool smart or risky? My thinking has shifted quite a bit. I started out feeling like it was a risky move, especially after writing down the pros and cons. I would write down a pro, think that it was super powerful, and then I would write the corresponding con and suddenly be convinced that the con outweighed the pro. But over time, and with the integration chat, I started thinking about things a little bit differently. I now think it can be smart with the right platform, one that focuses on the most impactful steps and is supported by integrations that make sense. With those taken care of, we can get our workflow feeling pretty seamless without it feeling unbalanced. So I've landed on it being a pretty smart move, at least when it's done intentionally. So now I'm feeling like the real question isn't if it's good or bad, but whether the system itself brings the right value to our business. Not every tool is built the same. Some systems are genuinely thoughtful about growing with a photographer, offering support, and building integrations that make life easier. And sometimes a good business can belly flop after a controversial change. That's why I always recommend taking time to really look at what a platform values. Who is it for? What do they prioritize? Do their future plans line up with a business's needs? It is not always super clear where a business will end up, but keeping tabs on them can help identify when they start moving in a direction we may no longer find beneficial. And hey, what we start our business with and what we end up using years down the line will probably be wildly different and change quite a few times. Not everyone begins with a polished system. Some of us started with contracts in Microsoft Word, payments through PayPal, and galleries delivered via Google Drive. And you know what? That works. We use what we got when we got it. A good system doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to support the version of our business we're running right now. And if there's space to grow, that's awesome. That's actually one of the reasons I love digging into these systems, because I know how tempting it is to jump at something that promises to give us some relief. But not everything that promises ease is built for longevity. So if you're looking at a platform or already using one that you aren't quite sure about, let me know in the comments. I am always down for a good investigation. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you've enjoyed this video, I hope you'll consider liking, subscribing, and hitting that bell so that you know whenever I release a new video. Thanks again, and I'll catch you in the next one.